So to start off, I'm just curious how you came to be involved in academia, because I understand you sort of, after you graduated from school, you went back to sort of the academy before you were an administrator, is that right?
I was a physical therapist, right? My undergraduate degree is in physical therapy, so I did, a variety of clinical jobs when I graduated, and then I did a master's degree in child development because I was working with children. And then I was at McGill and I did a PhD degree in epidemiology and biostatistics. And at that point, there was an administrative position opened in the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy, of which I was recruited to be the director of that school at McGill.
Right.
And after that, it was just one of those things that I was doing teaching and I was doing my research, but I slowly moved into senior administration. So I then was recruited to the University of Alberta as the Dean of Faculty, and then there was appointed Vice President of Research and External Affairs, and then was recruited here.
So that happened organically, or like when you were going through school, did you have an interest
Totally
in
organically. I had no interest, and in fact, when I remember clearly when I was approached to be director of the school, right after I finished my PhD, I went to my PhD supervisor and said, "This is not what I want to do. I want to find the cure to X." And he basically said, "You probably can do more good by directing and ensuring the excellence of a program than you might by beavering away in a research laboratory." Now, that wasn't exactly why I made the choice, but it was not in my game plan. I did not sit there as a young person saying, "I want to be a vice president," or "I want to be a dean."
Do you feel like what your advisor said has sort of come true? Do you feel like you missed out on doing some exciting research, or do you feel like this was...
Well, it's an interesting question. I'm not somebody to particularly look back and think about regrets, but up until I was president, I was actively an active researcher and teacher. And so some of the research I did, I feel really, really good about, that I really was able to make a contribution. I was looking at children who had disabilities and trying to predict very early in their lives, right when they were born, high-risk infants, whether they were going to develop normally or whether they needed to have intervention. So I was in the nursery, collecting data and writing right up until I came here. And then, so, I feel very fortunate. I think I've been able to experience both.
Right, sure. And so, I guess a little bit before that, how did you come to study in Canada in the first place? I understand you were born in the...
Yeah, I'm American by birth. My husband was recruited to McGill as a professor back in 1973, before you were all born. And so that's how we came. We thought we would come and probably, spend 4 or 5 years and then move back. And of course we didn't. We became Canadian citizens and have been here ever since.
And looking back on your time as Ubyssey president, what would you say you're most proud of?
I don't want to claim anything. Presidents don't really do those things. It's the community that does them. But if I look over that decade and I think about what the institution was able to accomplish, one, we opened Ubyssey Okanagan, hugely important to the province, to the citizens of British Columbia, to the future students and that whole region. 2, we opened Ubyssey at Robson Square, which we were not downtown at all. And that was, I think, very important to reach out. 3, we opened the Downtown Learning Exchange, which I think is really important in terms of social and experiential learning, and not just for our students to contribute, but for our students to learn. And that's been a model that a lot of universities have adopted. And I guess 3rd, all of our linkages with the international universities. We opened Korea University House, we opened Tec de Monterrey, and we opened Hong Kong University House. And I think those linkages will serve our students here. I mean, you were lucky, you went, but probably less than 20% of our students actually have an international experience where they go away. So I felt really strongly that we needed to internationalize the campus if we were serious about global citizens. And I guess finally, Arno, for me, the Trek vision, which has been, replaced by Place and Promise, was very, I think, very forward-thinking in identifying global citizenship as something that we would commit to. And that I'm so proud of when I look at what's happening on that front now.
Right. And then looking back with sort of 2020 hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently, either anything specific or thematically something you wish you had devoted more?
Well, I think you always wish that somehow what we were providing at the undergraduate level was more intimate, more, students had, not just in their third and fourth years, but, in their first and second years had really good interaction, but were able to bring the research into the classroom, that students are able to access the brilliant minds. I'm very excited to hear that Jenny Hoffman, who is a new recruit in quantum physics from Harvard, will be teaching first year physics. That to me is the goal, to put our best people in front of our newest students to excite them and get them excited.
And did you encounter any challenges either at Ubyssey or coming up as an administrator elsewhere, being a woman in a field that, it's the gender balance is improving, but it's still like more heavier representation from men? Did you encounter any?
You mean throughout my whole career, or just?
Yeah, throughout your career, but specifically in administration. So, first you were the director of that firm, and then moving up from there.
I have to say I didn't, or if I did, I wasn't aware of it. I think people always are aware when you walk in a room that you're a woman instead of a man. Certainly internationally, in many of the cultures, being a woman is a bit, it's a differentiator. But I always saw that to some degree as an advantage, because you will be remembered. But I actually think I've been given enormous opportunities, and I don't feel that, particularly at Ubyssey, I've always felt there's been a welcoming environment for diversity, and that we have a very open system where if you are capable and able and are performing, you will be accepted and given those opportunities. And I certainly have felt that in my own experience.
Sure. And outside of academics, outside of the research and the students, and the students are involved in everything, of course, but what would you say your favorite non-academic part of the university is, either anything on campus or just non-teaching?
Well, I love our performing arts programs. I love our opera program. I love our creative writing program. I look for whatever anybody has written. And I'm a big T-Bird fan. I know it sounds, in the 9 years I was here, I was a pretty common supporter. On a Friday or Saturday night, I'd be out at a game,
Yeah,
and
we need more people like that.
It wasn't just because I thought I should do it. My husband and I really like watching our athletes and cheering them on. I haven't followed it closely. I don't know. Our swim team, our volleyball teams. We have some great, our basketball team, hockey. Yeah. It's great entertainment.
It is. And why do you think more people don't come out to the games?
That's a good question, because personally, I prefer watching that than professional sports. I think it's baseball. I don't know if you've ever seen the T-Birds play baseball, but it's fabulous, right? Our rowing team. I can go on and on, right? I don't know whether it's a cultural thing. I don't know whether we need to advertise it more. I don't know whether we need to brand it more. that's not my job, right? But you asked me what I liked about the institution and what I did other than, and of course, I'll tell you the other thing. I have 4 grandchildren, right? And we love the Beatty Biodiversity Museum. I have one grandson who he could spend his entire day there, right? Because it is a great museum. I don't know whether maybe it's great for children anyway. And so things like that are really important. But I don't have the answer to why we don't have more people out. I think it's one of the best bargains going for entertainment.
And in the time since stepping down as president, what have you been up to? Did you stay in Vancouver? Have you been?
We've lived in Vancouver, and I made a conscious decision to step away from university activities, and I have been very involved in 3 nonprofit boards, the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education here in Vancouver, the Care Canada, which is a humanitarian and development relief agency out of Ottawa, and the Canadian Stem Cell Research Foundation, which you probably don't know, and I'm always proud to say stem cells were a Canadian discovery 50 years ago. And most Canadians don't know it, but it's probably the most significant medical breakthrough that you're going to experience in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. And then I was on 3 corporate boards, Shoppers Drug Mart, TransAlta, and the Bank of Montreal. All of those boards I've stepped off of now, so I'm not on any of them. Mm-hmm. And then I have 4 grandchildren. So I was busy with that. I was also part of the National Speakers Bureau.
Mm-hmm. And did you step down from those boards specifically to take this role, or you had stepped down from them?
It's a good question. The nonprofits, I stepped down to take this role. Okay, the corporate boards, I had already stepped off 2, and I stepped off 1 because of this job.
Mm-hmm.
I just
What was the last one?
The bank.
Okay.
I stepped off as of September 1 when I took the job.
Okay. And so, yeah, moving on to more current affairs. So I understand that you were offered the interim role by the chair of the board. And how did that work? Did you get a phone call? Did you get an email?
I got a phone call. We were actually holidaying,
mm-hmm.
and out of the blue.
And what was your first thought when?
Oh, absolutely not. Categorically no.
And then that moved.
Well, you've probably seen what I've written. I mean, I was stunned. I was literally stunned, and it was not in any game plan. I mean, you can think about my other life, decisions. None of this was in my game plan, but this was definitely not in my game plan. And we were actually holidaying as a family in Kauai, and I get this call, and I say, absolutely not. And he said, just think about it. Think about it for 24 hours. And so, in thinking about it, and when you step back, and career decisions are always interesting, how you approach them. I realized, I'm not young, and I realized that in my life, I've had wonderful opportunities, but there is no institution in this country, and no institution I've been associated with, that I care more deeply about. Mm-hmm. I mean, Ubyssey has been extraordinarily good to me, and extraordinarily good to me as an individual, but also good to me as a British Columbian and good to me as a Canadian. It is a unique institution in this country and plays a unique role in this province. And so, I thought, well, if serve to call, call to serve, if I can help, maybe I should.
Sure. And what was your initial ambivalence or reluctance? Why did you initially say, absolutely?
Oh, I know what this job entails. And it is grinding, and I'm old. I'm not where that. And I retired as my grandson. Didn't you do that already? So, I didn't come to it lightly, mm-hmm. and it wasn't in my plan. My life has moved on. We have 2 grandchildren in Dallas. I love going to see them. I know I won't be able to do those things as much. You're on call. Yeah. So that's why I've limited it. 10 months. June 30. I'm
Sure.
gone.
And how are you approaching the interim role in terms of getting up to speed? Are you approaching it differently than as if you were taking a full term? That I just need to learn these things,
yeah.
or you?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yes, of course you look at it differently. I'm not trying to develop a strategic vision. I'm not trying to think of all the new initiatives and where we want to be in 10 years and how do we get us there. That's not my job. My job is to ensure that the initiatives that are underway and the plan that was in place continues, and that we meet all of the expectations of the constituencies we serve, our students, our faculty, our staff, mm-hmm. and that we position Ubyssey to excel, as it should, in its learning, teaching, and research missions. Mm-hmm. That's my job.
Sure. And I want to ask about that a little bit, because you told the Ubyssey in the last interview you gave us a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned that you wanted to continue Arvind Gupta's mission for the school. But given that Dr. Gupta was by most accounts dismissed from the board, what makes you believe that you can continue his vision without running into the same conflicts that he apparently ran into?
Well, first of all, he resigned. Second of all, my sense is the board supports that vision, and I can assume nothing other than that, and I know the academic community supports it, and it is in process. And there are many initiatives that we are beginning to see moving forward, and it's my job to ensure that they are fulfilled. So I expect full confidence, and I'm absolutely convinced that we will succeed in moving that agenda forward.
I think people sort of look at the transition role and everything that's happened in the past couple of weeks, especially people who are more casual observers who just followed in the news, who aren't necessarily directly impacted by it. And I think it's kind of weird, there's a lot of things going on that seem sort of off, and there's waiting for the other shoe to drop, whether or not it does. Are you able to place yourself, if you hadn't been offered the interim role, if you were just an observer who cared deeply about this institution, looking at what was going on, what would your thoughts be, and what would you hope to see, the university do?
Well, I don't look at it particularly different because I'm interim versus if I were a citizen, because I bring the same lens to it. I bring my experience, my past experience, and my knowledge about the university and how it's governed and how decisions are made and so forth. And I have total confidence in the way that universities, and particularly Ubyssey, reaches decisions and consensus, and the diversity of voice around the governing table and so forth. So I see my job as promoting the university, but essentially, Arnold, the wonderful things about Ubyssey that make it great are still there. Nothing has changed the research excellence or the excellence of our students or the student programs or the academic or our faculty. Nothing of that has changed. And that's what will sustain us and move us through this. And it always has. You look at history, we're not 100 years old that we haven't had a few issues, right, that we've had to deal with. You're too young. The Great Depression, World War I, where there were no men on campus and very few faculty, World War II. My lifetime, APEC, International Congress, where there was huge student unrest and pepper spray and major questions. None of those have derailed the importance of our research and teaching missions. Those keep us moving, our people keep us moving. That's what we're all committed to. So that doesn't change.
Do you see your role as interim president in any way as needing to reassure the community? Because certainly it seems like many people are nervous or confused or upset.
Well, of course. I think part of my role is to just give that message that I think if you went down and asked anyone, student, faculty, staff, are they proud to be part of Ubyssey's research teaching mission, they would say yes. And that's what binds us, and that's what will sustain us. And my job is to celebrate that and reassure people that all of that is alive and well and doing extraordinarily well on any indicator that you would like. So we have the welcome of students, so imagine and create in the UBCO. That will be exciting to welcome our first year students and say, you're a wonderful group of people. We've got the opening of the Nest, and we've got the opening of the Robert H. Lee Alumni Center, and we'll be able to bring people in and talk about those things and reassure people. We're going to have the Allard Prize. We're going to have Nobel laureates. We're going to have a lot of wonderful things happening over this next year. And in each of those, it gives us an opportunity to make people very aware of the part of the institution that they're so proud of. So of course I will be playing that role.
Sure. And will you be addressing the students on Imagine Day? Will you
of course.
And
though I hear it's a huge production.
It's very
Are any of you addressing the students?
No, we'll be in the background, I think, maybe with a video camera.
Of course I'm going to be talking to the students.
And will Bort be making an appearance?
Well, how do you know about Bort?
Well, we follow, we keep up with.
Well, what do you think? This is a big debate. should I or should I not bring board back?
Well, it definitely made Ubyssey headlines
Is that
the
a
last
good
time
thing?
around. I don't know. You'd have to be the judge of that.
Well, I'd be interested in some advice.
Well, I think it was a mix. I mean, it got, because there are a lot of speeches that can be very stale. And I know when President Tuke gave some speeches, he liked to use Latin, and people were confused by that. They said, we don't understand Latin. And I think when you talked about your imaginary friend, people said, I mean, it's interesting, right? It's lively, but I think there was some confusion over what the takeaway was supposed to be. So I guess it would be depending on what kind of message you're trying to convey.
Well, I haven't made up my mind.
I'll have to stay
say,
tuned for
but
that.
it's so interesting because none of you heard the Bort speech, and that Bort still lives.
Bort does live, yes.
Do you know about Bort?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, when we Google you, it comes up pretty quickly.
Does it really?
So I think we're toward the end of this, but I'm curious, what is a typical day in the life of President Piper? I know you've only officially been on the job for a few days, but what are you doing now?
Well, right now I'm trying to get my feet on the ground. I'm trying to meet people. Most of the people, I know a lot of people, but I don't know a lot of people. There are a lot of new faces, a lot of new people, a lot of new initiatives. So I'm trying to brief myself on the issues that are really critical, the academic issues, the financial issues, the student issues, so it's really a listening time and a consolidation time. Once that period has ended, and along with all of the other things we just talked about, the celebratory things and the things that I will be doing officially, it'll be my job to kind of working with the executive team to prioritize those and ensure that they move forward, and constantly trying to figure out how we can support them, how we can either finance them or get the support that's needed to ensure that they happen. Because it's all about execution and getting the things to actually happen. Good ideas are always available. Getting them to actually happen takes a little bit of work.
And does it feel weird? I mean, what did you imagine you spending your September doing?
Oh, it feels weird. And this feels weird. I wasn't in this office. I was over in the old admin building, right on the ground floor. I think the weirdest thing is getting into an elevator. But it also feels good. It feels, familiar, but a bit weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed to happen.
Right.
This was not in my life plan, and I'm still getting used to it.
And would you accept a full term?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That I have been very clear. I am gone June 30 or earlier. If they appoint someone earlier,
And why is that?
because I'm not appropriate to lead this institution. This institution deserves an extraordinary leader, someone who understands and is prepared to take it into its next decade. UBC is positioned to be the best university in this country and one of a handful of extraordinary public universities in the world, and it's going to require someone who has the energy, the drive, the creativity, the thinking, the ability to do that, and I'm not that person.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I think that's all of my questions.